exposed to so much experience. And what we're presenting here are philosophies and theory to guide practice. We don't usually tell people what to do. It's people on the ground who normally find effective ways to do the practice. But what is missing are theories of how the mind, the brain, the body functions. Because we almost know too much. And we can't just keep accumulating information. What we need to do now is to integrate what information we hold now. So I think one of the problems in the Western and now also the Eastern construct is these are separate. You can say the mind and the heart are separate. The body and spirit are separate. So there's a separation. And in philosophy, we normally call that the mind-body problem. So there might be something like called Cartesian Medicine. Cartesian means that which makes reference to Descartes, René Descartes. And a lot of you might know that he is responsible for the mind-body problem. Yeah. Dualism. So something wrong with medicine is, and psychology, because when we do talk to doctors, they're like, I now need to know psychology. Because I need to talk to people. I'm not trained to listen to people. I'm trained to give them chemicals and interventions. And then psychologists also need to know more about the body. So they also need to get some of the trainings that doctors hold. So I guess one of the problems is in psychology, mind became disembodied. So medicine, psychology now it's a disembodied mentality. And psychologists are amazingly finding out that one of the most important things that we needed to access when we were young was movement. When the children lost their movement, their ability to play at a really young age, when they were told, okay, you need to sit down, you need to be a good boy, good girl, stop talking, read the book, you actually colonize their minds. I celebrate the Finnish schooling system, one of the most advanced schooling systems in the world. They're known to be the #1 schooling system. And why is that? Children are not allowed to take up reading, writing, and arithmetic until they're 7 or 8 years old. Because the right brain hasn't developed enough before you get them into the sequential thinking process. So the children are told to play. Go, run around. Because when you do have access to the body in that way, what you have is spatial awareness. Awareness of space around you that's free and expanded. But when you're told to, okay, sit like a military style, okay, that's the row, the column, listen to the big person talking, you're never asked what you think. You're never, they just tell you what to think. And that colonizes the mind. So it's not a coincidence that a lot of people now are going back to the body to heal the mind-body problem. And I think one of the effects of this is the body is unconscious. When we regard the body is stupid. It's base, it's carnal, it's evil, it's material. But we're realizing this is a universe. This is energy. And so an embodied consciousness now needs to arise so that the mind and the body aren't separate. We can't disregard the body as we celebrate the mind, and as we celebrate the body, we can't invalidate the mind. Philo, Sophie. Philo means love, Sophie means wisdom. So I think a person who doesn't have an identity is a person who doesn't have a philosophy. And that could be a culture or a certain group as well. I think we are looking for a philosophy, but the road to that is we need to love wisdom again. We need to be curious. We need to be open. And people who lose curiosity, they shut down. You're like, I know everything already. Stop talking to me like I already don't know everything. Somehow when the brain opens, the less you know, the more you actually know. When you don't know anything, there's a space where everything is known. And a lot of that wisdom is hiding in the body. The body is learning to hold a non-linear awareness. It holds awareness in space. Okay, so here's like an interesting concept where we've been observing people in the awakening process for years. And one of the most interesting and weirdest phenomena, which is normally a pathology in medicine, but in fact could be the medicine to the pathology, is when people go so deep. I don't know if this has happened to you. You know it's happened to people. Those who know Yella, happened to her a couple of months ago when she was in Maya. When people become spirit, sometimes they lose the ability to talk. They lose their ability to name things. They have a hard time expressing in words. The first time I noticed this, Sam was actually there in Thailand. I don't know if you remember Jo. And then she went through a really deep process. And then we were sitting in lunch in Chiang Rai. And I was there and I was, hey, tell me your name. And she was about to say it, but she realized she couldn't say her name. And I was watching her for an hour, laughing, crying, not able to put things in words. So she experienced what pathologically is called aphasia.
They put it closer in the...
Yeah. And in the healing processes around the world, people are going through these things called light language. I don't know if you've heard of that. When people start talking like babies and aliens, birds. So what is aphasia? Why does it happen? What are the reasons why people lose their language? So when you send a lot of electricity through the corpus callosum, imagine like you suddenly surge all this electricity and magnetism through these nerve tracts. A lot of it spills over to this part right here. It's called the Broca's area. And that part is responsible for language production. So when people damage the Broca's area, they can't speak. When there are lesions in that part of the brain. And it's interesting because it's only on the left side if you are right-handed. If you're left-handed, then it's going to be on the right side. So people who will be able to take people into deep healing, you might get people to a point where they're like children. And I think that's one of the most amazing gifts. If you have traumatized people, people who are just exhausted with patterns and stories, and then they just keep repeating and looping, how do you take them out? You need to erase the story. If people are going to change, you need to bring them into a brain state where you can be new. You can be white, you can be blank. Because every time you wake up, it's always the same story. I'm limited, I'm small, I'm ashamed, I'm not smart, they don't love me, I don't know myself, I'm weak, I don't have power. So there is something to erasing things. So it's okay to bring people into aphasia. I've seen people not just go into Broca's aphasia, but also Wernicke's is here in the superior temporal gyrus, or the STG. Now, Wernicke's area is responsible for helping you understand what people are saying. And I've seen people in front of me, and then I would be talking, and they're like, you're making these sounds. It could be as simple as C-A-T. They go over it in their head. I can't connect H-I or H-O-U-S-E. Like naming seems to be so hard for them because it doesn't express the essence or the pure truth about a thing. It's like, okay, this is your name, B-O-B. You don't seem like a B-O-B, you seem like so much bigger. Language helps us to limit. But then when people are tired of limitations, one of the first things they'll say goodbye to is language. For a while, for I've seen people lose language for hours, weeks, months. I saw one woman lose it for years. I wasn't worried because when I looked at them, they were alien beings. They just couldn't word it, but they would communicate in a way that they were holding like so much more. So aphasia would be a study in the medicine process. That when you do play with the corpus callosum, and the other one would be the arcuate fasciculus. The arcuate fasciculus is interesting because it allows the Broca's and the Wernicke's area to communicate with each other. Language production and language comprehension. So going back to the question about story, do we bypass? No. When you bring people into the baby state, if you want to get them to change, they need to construct a new story. So you need to connect the production of meaning and the comprehension of meaning once again. Later on, you now need to create patterns that will help in the formation of new memories, new information, in a way that's now they are responsible. If you are a student of energy and vibration and like a lot of the things that we're interested in, something you'd be interested in is translation. Go away. And in Belgium, there's a lot of translation happening all the time. I'm not talking about translation in languages or culture. I'm talking about the translation between sound, image, words, and movement. Somehow the song, the painting, the movie, the poem, the dance in your brain are cross-wiring with each other. When you hear the music, somehow that translates into images. So in the healing process, when you bring certain kinds of music, people see certain colors. Do you find that interesting? That there are 7 colors in the rainbow and there are 7 notes in the scale. Is there somehow a grid or a matrix that the human is built upon? There's the retinotopic map of the visual cortex and in the retina, and then there's the tonotopic map. Your auditory cortex is laid out like a piano. And then the eyes, this is what you do, is laid out like a color wheel, which isn't so simple. Here's one interesting mapping that I particularly like, that's not so complex. So notice here that when people receive energy from the environment, how it enters is normally the hertz level. At the base of the spine, it's like super high vibration. And then as it translates from transduction, encoding, selection, all the way to thinking and acting, you actually need to slow down the vibration. So when you do receive very high vibration, there's a part of you that's not maybe able to clarify things and thoughts, but vibrationally, it's holding a lot of codes. And there's a part of your brain closer to the brain stem that's able to take that in, even if you're not thinking about it. For me, one of the simplest ways to approach philosophy would be about time and space. What is time? We asked earlier. If you're going to ask what is time, you need to ask what is space, because they go together. Some people, they don't have space, and then they don't have access to time. Give them more time, they have more space. So somehow space and time wires both your body and your mind. You have an architecture. You have an actual interior design. And you can concretize this. Like when you measure the heart rate, when you measure, let's say in the heart, cardiac output, then you would measure in time heart rate. But when you look at space, you would measure stroke volume. Like how much blood are you taking in and out? and what's the speed in which the heart is pumping the blood. So you can either affect the heart spatially or through timing. Same with breath rate and depth. It's either you're breathing deep or shallow, or you're breathing fast or slow. It's time and space. Same with the brain. It's either there's less or more frequencies or higher or lower amplitude. So your body's built on time and space. And if you want to change a person, you change time and space. Did space get limited? Expanded. Is time getting a little bit hectic? Slow it down. So what we'll do this afternoon is we'll look at what that actually means from an experiential space. Let's think about music. I think music is interesting. When you create a recognizable pattern where there's a duration between the noises, what you create is a pulse. And there's something in your body that's perceiving the pulse. Now each pulse holds a dimension. So that's a dimension, and then when I change the pulse, that creates another kind of awareness. And you go to a cafe, you go to a restaurant, you're driving your car, you're actually exposed to many, many things. So your brain somehow taking all these pulse perceptions together and creating a one song. Sometimes that song can be really messy. And sometimes that can be well organized. You're not aware of it, but your body's doing it all the time. So remember we talked about the SA node in the heart that holds the pacemaker cells in the heart. The pacemaker cells in the heart has what are called adrenergic receptors, so it's very sensitive to norepinephrine. As we said, if you expose the heart to stress, the heart will usually palpitate. Any stress will directly innervate the heart. And because the connection between the sympathetic nervous system and the heart, it doesn't actually have as many obstructions, so even the slightest sound will trigger the heart. Your heart is super sensitive, and a lot of people had to create boundaries so that they would be less sensitive, so they wouldn't feel as much, but actually there's so much happening. So in music, if you are interested in music, or in medicine that's going to be based on activating the heart and training circadian rhythmicity, there's a range where the body can recognize the rhythm, and that's somewhere in between, I would say, 30 to 280 BPM, beats per minute. It could be, sometimes they say 60 to 180, 60 to 300. The whole point is that if the rate slows enough to a certain point, you won't consider it to be music anymore. Because 30 sounds per minute is really, really slow. There's a point where time would become space. There's a point in which time would become space. And I think the way to understand this has something to do with the brain waves. So a lot of people are interested, okay, what about the brain waves? Brainwave oscillations, what are they? What do you actually mean when you say delta, theta, alpha, beta, gamma? When you're within the recognizable BPM, okay, to the doctors and therapists, what's the normal heart rate? Between 100 at the most, right? So mostly that's somewhere in between alpha and beta. Let's say beta, let's say we assign beta here. Only symbolically, based on entrainment as a set of effects. To go into delta, you need to pass through certain oscillations. So beta is a certain rate. We're looking at maybe 15 to 30 hertz. Delta would be super slow. It would be somewhere like 0.4, 0.5 to 4 hertz. For you to drop beta to delta, you need to pass through the things in between. Again, our goal is to raise it to gamma. But to do that, you need to slow something down in the body. You need to access more delta. So when alpha starts to show up, it's very easy to get alpha waves to jump up. You know how? You close your eyes. Because alpha, its role is to gate sensory elements. When you're experiencing and feeling too much, you're thinking a lot in sequence. And you need alpha to keep out the sounds and the images so that you can go inside. And then as we go deeper and deeper into alpha, theta might appear. Now, what is theta responsible for? Theta usually shows up in the hippocampus. So I think we're implicating that theta has something to do with memory. Theta is responsible for converting short-term memory into long-term memory. So a lot of theta shows up in the hippocampus and the entorhinal cortex. And then more delta and higher gamma can come through. So that's how you see the lower you go from beta to theta, time in the dream actually becomes space. And I want to demonstrate this. We need to borrow a body.
100%. 100%.
So extending the mind through space. What is memory in the body? And how do we network information? space. Back to origins. Look around you. This is what we look like from within. Everything is inside. Everything we need is inside. All our resources are inside. Take a last moment. What is the body? What is embodied? What is embodied? Back to the breath. Feel the rhythms, micro and macro, coming together as one combined signal. And when you're ready, you can slowly open your eyes. Take your time to come back into time. Amazing. Thank you. I think we would be interested in hearing you share where you went, what you felt.
Yes, it was different than the experience I had already in the past. Yeah, in the beginning I was a bit like thinking, and I had to let go because I knew you were all watching. What was really new for me was how there was deep pressures, and at a certain moment when I was sitting down and it was totally new, I had like the electricity going waft to my both sides at the same time, and it was like I had it once when I had a needle in my arm. They wanted to I don't know, take blood or something. I don't remember. That they hit a base. Tendon. Yeah, it was actually a little bit that feeling, but then not with the pain, without the pain. It went really to all my fingers. That's something I never experienced. Further, yeah, it was a bit things I had experienced already. Yeah, I always laugh, so it's something I do, but yeah, it felt nice. It was good. It was but since I was not doing a lot lately for self-practice, so I didn't had any experience. I have that always when I don't do it for a while, it stays a lot into the shocking, and it's not going to the waves. When I do it a lot, then it go faster to the waves, and that was almost at the end that I was going to the waves already, and so now since it lasted a little bit till today.
It was come back.
Yeah. So yeah, that's what I can tell.
Thank you though for being brave.
Thank you for.
Let's